Call the meeting to order. This is the Platting Board. It's March 20th, 2013, and it is 6:33 p.m. I'd like to first ask for roll call.
Lindell Story.
Here.
Steve Abel.
Here.
Ken Fuller.
Here.
Daniel Young.
Present.
Brent Cole. Anthony Cange. Trevor Edmondson.
Here.
Clayton Walker.
Here.
Christina Enix. Thank you.
And I'd first like to welcome our new board members. We have Clayton Walker Jr. and Christina Enix. So I'd like everybody to get to know each other by the end of the night. Okay. Next item on the agenda is approvals. May I have a motion for the approval of the action summaries of Wednesday, February 6th, 2013? Mr. Edmondson approves, or moves, excuse me. Mr. Abel seconds. Are there any edits or changes? Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. The minutes are approved. Next is special order of business, disclosures. Are there any disclosures tonight? Ms. Enix.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I have a disclosure. Regarding the Eagle Crossing, I have known Jim Sawhill and his wife for many years. I've also known Connie Yoshimura. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial in fact and act as a member of the board without personal bias. My past involvement and personal interest will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case.
Thank you. May I have a motion directing Ms. Enix to participate? Mr. Walker? And Mr. Fuller seconds. Mr. Walker, will you speak to your motion, please?
I think that the disclosures that she's made are adequate and doesn't sound like she has a substantial interest.
Thank you. Is there any objection to Ms. Enix participating? Hearing and seeing none, Ms. Enix, you're directed to participate. Are there any other disclosures or conflicts of interest? Mr. Edmondson.
I have a disclosure in case S11496-7 Eagle Crossing Subdivision, and in case S10625-12 Eagle Crossing Subdivision. My firm, the Peterson Group, and Bob Peterson are involved in a project with the petitioner, Ms. Connie Yoshimura, in a project, Potterview subdivision in South Anchorage. However, we have no financial interest or personal interest in the project that's before us tonight and can act impartial in this case.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Mr. Edmondson to participate? Mr. Story. And Mr. Fuller seconds. Mr. Story, will you speak to your motion?
I move to direct Mr. Edmondson to participate in case number S-11496-7 and S-10625-12 Eagle Crossing subdivision. I intend to support my motion based on Mr. Edmondson's testimony. It sounds like he can remain unbiased in this case.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Edmondson, you're directed to participate in case S-11496-7 and S-10625-12 Eagle Crossing subdivision. Are there any other disclosures or conflicts of interest? I have two. In case S-11496-7 and S-10625-12 Eagle Crossing subdivision, I've worked for the petitioner on the site on this subdivision in the capacity of stormwater management, and I declare a conflict of interest and ask to be excused from presiding over this matter. May I have a positive motion directing me to participate, please? Mr. Story moves and Mr. Edmondson seconds. Mr. Story, will you speak to your motion, please?
I move to direct Mr. Young to participate in case number S-11496-7 and S-10625-12 Eagle Crossing. I will not be supporting my motion. I believe that Mr. Young has recused himself from prior Eagle Crossing cases, and I feel that it's prudent to recuse him from this one also.
Thank you. Since there's opposition, we'll vote. Is there any further discussion or additional discussion? Okay, we'll vote. For clarification, a yes vote directs me to participate, and a negative vote directs me not to participate. And there are 7 nay votes, so I am recused. In the case S-11973-1 WG Pipple Subdivision, Block 1, Lots 3A and 3B, my firm has had business dealings with the petitioner's representative. I am a former employer of the petitioner's representative. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of this board without personal bias. My past involvement and personal interest will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case. May I have a positive motion directing me to participate, please? Mr. Story, would you speak to your motion?
I move to direct Mr. Young to participate in case S-11973-1 WG Pipple Subdivision, Block 1, Lots 3 and 3B. Based on Mr. Young's testimony, I feel that he can be impartial in this case. Therefore, I would like to have him participate.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmondson seconds. Is there any discussion or any opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes and I'm directed to participate. Are there any additional disclosures or conflicts of interest? I want to make sure that everybody has had an opportunity to see the informational items, the abbreviated plats. Are there any discussions or corrections on those? Hearing and seeing none. The next item, special order of business, is annual election of officers. And what would the board like to do? Is the board interested in just leaving the officers as they are? Or would you like to have elections? Mr. Edmondson.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to keep these same officers that we've had previously. Mr. Young is the chairman and Mr. Story is the vice chairman.
Thank you. And Mr. Fuller seconds that. Is there any opposition? Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. We'll retain the officers. The current officers will be the new officers. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Time extensions, I don't believe we have any. Findings of fact, we don't have any. Commercial tracks. Other resolutions for approval, I don't believe we have any of these tonight. And old business, we have public hearings. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meeting is, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedure. Petitioners, including all of her representatives, have 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. And I request that when you come up to the podium, if you want to reserve time for rebuttal, tell us at the beginning and we will reserve it. Otherwise, the time that remains when you're finished, you can still use that for rebuttal. But if you want to reserve it, let us know, please. Representatives of group, community councils, PTAs, etc. have 5 minutes. Individuals have 3 minutes. We have a green light when your time begins, so 1 minute warning when it turns amber, and when it's red, I ask that you wrap up your testimony with 1 or 2 maximum conclusion sentences. When testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the board. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC Title 21.11.304. The decision of the board at scheduled public hearings shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to expiration of the 7th day to prepare written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision within 20 days of the final appealable decision. An interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. And we're now ready for the first case. I'm going to recuse myself, and Mr. Story. Oh, excuse me. Thank you. The first case is S11967-1 Cranberry Ridge Subdivision. And that case is postponed until April 3rd, 2013. May I have a positive motion to postpone Cranberry Ridge subdivision case S11967-1? Mr. Cole, would you speak to your motion, please?
I intend to vote for this motion to postpone because it's been at the request of the petitioner.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmonton seconds it. Is there any discussion or opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. The next case is S11496-7, Eagle Crossing subdivision, which was postponed from February 6, 2013. I'm going to recuse myself, and Vice Chair Story will preside over this.
The first order of business is to request for a motion to hear both cases at the same time, and the cases would be S-11496-7 and S-10625-12 Eagle Crossing. Both of the staff packets for both cases have the same information in them, so I would like to get a motion to hear both of these cases simultaneously. Mr. Edmondson moves for the motion to be approved to hear both cases. Mr. Cole seconds that. Mr. Edmondson?
I move in case S11496-7 and case S10625-12 to hear both these cases at the same time in order, since it tracks with the staff packet and both issues can be handled at the same time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the motion or provide any other findings? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Staff, can we have your presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Erica McConnell. I'm the current planning section manager, and I'll be presenting both these two cases and the next case for Dave Whitfield, who is the planner who worked on both of these cases. Due to the postponement of this meeting, he is on leave and unable to be here. We recommended that you hear S11496-7 and S10625-12 together as one case because the proposal for each case is to amend two conditions of approval that are the same in both cases. So that the same conditions of approval were placed in two different cases, and thus, since the amendments are the same, the board has to either approve both cases or deny both cases. Were you to approve one case and deny the other, you would create a situation where there were conflicting conditions of approval. So that is why we recommend that you hear it as one case. The request in these cases is to phase the construction of Eagle River Lane to full municipal standards. It's currently constructed to emergency standards. The petitioner is requesting to construct the southern 570 feet of Eagle River Lane this summer in 2013 and the northern 1,050 feet next summer by October of 2014. The petitioner is also requesting that the subdivision agreement be amended to reflect this change. And the reasons that I expect the petitioner will elaborate on relate to ongoing property negotiations with a property owner at the north end of Eagle River Lane and coordination with the municipality for designing and constructing Eagle River Lane beyond this property owner or the petitioner's property north of Ptarmigan. The municipality is requesting a legislative appropriation for design of that road, and by postponing the northern phase, that would allow for some coordination with that, assuming the municipality gets that grant. The municipality does recommend approval of this phasing plan, but with a change due to safety concerns of where the break in the improvements would happen. The municipality recommends that the southern 1,100 feet be constructed this summer, with the northern 520 feet being postponed until next year. The current subdivision agreement can be amended to just relate to the southern portion of this road, and a new subdivision agreement can be entered into for the northern portion of the road. So staff feels that the second request of the petitioner, which is item B on page 4 of your packet, that that request is not necessary, and therefore staff recommends denying the second request, but approving the first request, which is A on page 4. With me here to my left is the traffic engineer, the municipal traffic engineer, and she's available to answer questions as to why the municipality has recommended moving the location of where the break in phasing would happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, this case is now open for public hearing. Can we have the petitioner's presentation, please? Please state and spell your name.
Good evening. My name is Jim Sawhill, S-A-W-H-I-L-L. I'm with Lounsbury & Associates, and I'm here tonight representing Driftwood Bay LLC with the request to phase Eagle River Lane and modify the subdivision agreement and change the conditions of approval. I guess at first I would like to lead off with We concur with staff's recommendation and have no objection to their recommendation on the change in phasing and the conditions as stated in the staff packet. So we're in agreement, reluctantly, I would say, to change the phasing of it. I've provided you two graphics tonight. One is shows the change in phasing, the extent of the road that would be built with the modified phasing as recommended by staff, taking the first phase of the road up around the corner to approximately station 19, which is where the AWW pressure reducing valve is. And the other thing we've provided is pictures of Eagle River Lane as it exists today as an emergency access road. So we wanted to let you know that the road is there, it is open, it is being used by the public. We do acknowledge it needs to be improved to urban standards, but we're still struggling with getting the remaining right-of-way on the northern end as the cause for our request to phase it. The story of Eagle River Lane is kind of a long story, and in some places kind of sad, and it's been tough to get to where we are. Back in 2001, when a previous developer was in charge of Eagle Crossing, a water line was constructed down Eagle River Lane, and at the time they believed that the right-of-way was there across the Hanaway properties through a section line easement. And unfortunately, the construction of the water line disturbed the ashes of Mrs. Hanaway, which greatly upset Mr. Hanaway when that occurred. And that's when the whole issue of whether there was right-of-way in place came to light. At that point, Mr. Hanaway got an opinion from an attorney that no right-of-way, no section line easement exists through his property. There's a disagreement with the municipal attorney. There's been third opinions, and since then we've been trying to negotiate and settle this right-of-way issue. And given the emotional state of Mr. Hanaway, that's been a tough negotiation to get through. We believe we have an agreement in place to purchase his entire piece of property, but one of the conditions of that sale agreement is he wants to remain on his property through the fall of 2013, which is the reason we need to go ahead and phase this road at this point. So we think we have a solution in sight, but we are asking for a modification to the conditions to allow us to go ahead and phase the road. The emergency access road has been in place since 2010 and has been in use. And again, we think we have agreement with Mr. Hanaway, but to date it's still not signed. We still don't have a signed agreement. We think we're very close, but it's been a tough road to get to where we are. We have taken this out to the public to inform them of the phasing. We presented the phasing concept to the Driftwood Bay Homeowners Association at their annual meeting, and they passed a resolution supporting the phasing. We presented the phasing to the Eagle River Road Board, who is currently maintaining the road. They passed a resolution in favor of the phasing. And then last, we presented it to the Eagle River Community Council, Eagle River Valley Community Council, and also got a resolution of support from them. So we've been out doing our efforts to work with the community and gain their support for what we're doing. So we would appreciate your support tonight. And again, we have no objection to the staff packet as written or the conditions. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes, 50 seconds for rebuttal. Are there any questions for Mr. Sawhill? Thank you. Mr. Edmondson.
Through the chair, Mr. Sawhill, you mentioned that you had what sounded like quite a bit of community support through the road district and through the community council and homeowners association. Was that the other one?
Yes, the Driftwood Bay Homeowners Association, the Eagle River Road Board, and then the Eagle River Valley Community Council.
And was that in support of the municipality's revised language and revised phasing plan, or was that in support of your proposed phasing, initial proposed phasing plan?
It's a mix.
Oh,
The Driftwood Bay Homeowners Association was okay with what we wanted to do. The Eagle River Road Board favored the municipality's phasing, taking it farther up, and I believe the Community Council endorsed the road board's recommendation.
Okay, just another question. You said you reluctantly were in support of the municipality's proposed phasing plan. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
We're trying to, I think you understand that we try to match projects and I guess get them to balance economically. And the next phase we're going to develop is Phase J, and it has a limited number of lots and a limited ability to support off-site improvements. And the additional 300 feet extending around the curve does stretch the performa on this phase pretty tightly. But we did listen to the technical arguments that the municipality made for continuing the road through the curve and the safety issues that they had for stopping the paving in the curve. So I think there's some valid technical reasons for their position, where ours are economic.
I'm just looking at the drawing of the new proposed phasing plan, and I'll probably have this question for the traffic engineer as well. Why that location? Is it just because it gets around the curve? Is it?
There was two reasons behind the municipality's thinking. One was getting around the curve, and the other issue was there's essentially two road standards that are currently in the subdivision agreement. And that's the place where the road standards break in the subdivision agreement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sahel.
Thank you.
Mr. Cole?
Through the chair, I'm concerned that we don't have an agreement with the landowner. Is there a deadline for him signing that? And are you going to be back here again in another year asking for another continuance or extension?
That's a tough question, and we believe we have agreement, but we don't have it signed. There is time in the winter when Mr. Hanaway goes south, and he spends some of his winter in Arizona, and I don't know exactly what his travel has been this winter. But we were hoping to have had this signed before our meeting, and we don't have it done. And I guess to a certain extent, Mr. Cole, we share your concern. We're kind of in a rock and a hard spot. You know, we don't have the right of way to go forward. We've provided very generous offers to just purchase the entire property. And again, we have a verbal agreement, but we don't have it signed. And
so just kind of, again, is there any deadline for him to sign?
we haven't put a deadline on him. When you have a private person negotiating with a private person, you know, we don't have condemnation authority. We just have to negotiate. And it puts us in a tough position. If there was a public road being constructed, there's a process where they can go in and acquire that right away through the courts. But we don't have that available to us. So
there is no deadline for him to sign?
There's no deadline for him to sign. If he signs next week or next month, we would happy to have his signature any of those times.
And if he doesn't sign?
I think then the attorneys come out, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, explain that to me. The attorneys come out. What is that?
We have asked the municipal attorney to assist us in getting this completed, and we've probably not seen as much support from them as we would like. We can always go build the road and let Mr. Hanaway sue us. That's one option. That's not an option I would prefer. You know, without right-of-way, I don't know what we do.
So there is a possibility that you guys could be back here in another 6 months or a year asking for more time.
Yeah. Can I ask Mr. Devich to answer that? He's been handling it.
Rick Davies, project manager. I've been the one handling Mr. Hanaway. Mr. Hanaway is simply not available at this time. But I think one of the things Bill wanted to hear was, is the community willing to let him stay on the property? And so one of the things that happens with tonight is if the community says yes, I think we're there. So, but we have no way of communicating with him. He's either at a golf course in Arizona or he's at a gold mine in the rural parts of Alaska. And we regularly, weekly, send him emails and telephone calls. But I think that's sort of the last little piece that he wants to see the community saying, okay, fine, we'll let you stay there through the next season. And I think we're there.
I guess just so that you understand, I mean, this has been, I wasn't part of much of this, but it's been going on for years. And it seems like somebody needs to get moving, and because this isn't benefiting anybody as best I can tell.
Mr. Paul, through the chair, we understand your frustration. Believe me, we have the same. We do not have the authority to condemn his property. We've made him a very attractive offer. His friends are encouraging him to agree, encouraging him to leave the property to get away from his emotional problem that's associated with the property. And I just think that's what's going to happen when he comes back at the end of the winter.
I guess if I could, my name is Connie Yoshimura, and I'm the managing partner of Driftwood Bay LLC. I guess what I would like to say in response to your question, Mr. Cole, is that we have made considerable progress and continue to make progress. The road is open. We did improve it to emergency egress standards so that it is not a safety issue for the residents, and we are willing to improve the road an additional 1,000 feet this year to urban standards. We think the purchase of the Hanaway property solves the problem for the municipality as well as for the neighborhood for the improvement of the road. And we have met personally in person with Mr. Hanaway. He does have a purchase and sale agreement prepared by an attorney. His friends and advisors have encouraged him to accept our offer, which is for fair market value to be determined by an appraisal. And we have every reason to believe that he will accept it. He is an 82-year-old man, and he expected to die on this property.
And through the chair, I really appreciate that. I understand. I think that as a member of the board, we have an interest in seeing that when petitioners come before us and propose dates for completing things, that there's an interest in getting things done. That way it's efficiently. Having to come back repeatedly over the years to get extensions is time consuming, and I understand, but you just got to, it seems to me somebody's got to get to the bottom of it, figure it out. I mean, his attorney could have been here to tell us that he's going to sign, or that there's going to be a signature, or there are other issues. There's a lot of things that could have get done, and I'm not faulting you. I'm just looking at the history going, this needs to move forward so that the neighbors in this community can get the road that they expected in this area.
We don't disagree with that statement, and we're certainly doing the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the petitioner? Thank you.
Thank you.
5 minutes, 50 seconds for rebuttal. We'll now open the meeting to public hearing and to hear public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Please come forward. State and spell your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Mark McAllister, spelled McAllister. And I'm the operations manager for the Eaglewood subdivision. We're just west of the Eagle River Lane, across from Ptarmigan. Eaglewood consists of 929 homes. We own our own roads and trails and lighting and drainage. Our kids from kindergarten through 6th grade go to Ravenwood Elementary, which means we have to cross the road and the new traffic pattern. So many residents of Eaglewood, they walk or drive their child to school. and they're pretty familiar with the new traffic pattern. It has been going on a very, very long time. Lots of complaints have come into the office where I work, and when I was on the board of directors for Eaglewood, lots of residents are pretty charged up about the delay. The board of directors, I'm acting on the board of directors tonight, and the residents of Eaglewood, and we're strongly opposed to yet another extension of the road. For the simple reason of it's a public, it's an access road for emergency, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. The grade is steep. It's not too steep for municipal standards. There's no lighting. Traffic drives way too fast. There's not much enforcement, if any, at all. I drove out there last night and I parked on Ptarmigan just watching traffic go through the intersection by Ptarmigan where our kids are made to cross the road to walk to Ravenwood Elementary. Seems like stopping is just an option for many, and traffic is way too fast. I don't know that bringing the road up to municipal standards will take care of the people who choose not to follow the laws. However, I can't think of any reason whatsoever to delay this project any longer. It's got nothing to do with the financial situation of a possible more homes in the subdivision below us. It's got everything to do with public safety, and that's our position. There's no lighting. We need traffic lights. We need some enforcement from someone. I have lots of complaints about the dust in the summertime. Paving half the road is not going to really change that much. I'm sorry to hear about the gentleman, and his wife that passed away. It's very unfortunate. We need to solve that as well. Allowing another delay it just takes on too much risk for our kids, and it's just not prudent. And I really hope that you do not allow another extension.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. McAllister?
I'm a little confused. Are you supporting the proposition, or are you against it?
We are strongly opposed to the extension.
How would you accomplish the road if you don't give them an extension?
That's not for me to decide how to accomplish the road. That's not what I do.
Are these petitioners responsible for the delay?
Are they responsible for the delay?
Yes.
The petitioners?
Correct.
Are they asking for the delay tonight?
I'm asking you, are they responsible for the delay?
Largely, I believe they are.
Didn't they come in after the previous group failed and pick up the lack of being completed and step in and put their money at risk?
Yes, and now they're still asking for extensions.
So how else would it be completed without an extension? I don't understand an objection.
Well, there's two phases. They're proposing the phase for 2013 and 2014. Why can't we? And then we're going to pave half the road, 500, whatever it is, 500 feet this year, and completion of it next year. I don't understand that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. E. next. Have a question?
My question was for the petitioner before he came up. So,
Are there any other questions for Mr. McAllister? Mr. Cole.
But really the safety issue, isn't that more directed toward the police department? I mean, isn't that what their responsibility is? I mean, if people are driving too fast, if they're not obeying the traffic, we can't do anything about that. Isn't that something that...
Absolutely.
Have you contacted the police department? Have they failed to place people or troop officers out there? Is there any enforcement?
There is some enforcement, and of course I know that there's never enough where we want it when we need it. But again,
the way it is all over town.
I know, right?
So that you would agree with me that the enforcement of the traffic laws is not something we could control, nor would this project have any impact on that, right?
Right.
That's something the police department has to do. And I understand your frustration, but as my fellow board member indicated, you can't see a solution to this absent buying this gentleman's property, can you? To completing this project? I mean, his property is right in the middle of it. What do you do? Right?
Right. I don't have a solution for that, but I also heard that neither does anyone else. We hope to have an agreement at some point.
To buy him out, right? If he gets bought out, then
right. If
there is a solution.
That's correct. Although there's no date or time in place for that, we're really just hoping that he comes back from wherever he's at and says, "Okay, I'm ready." He may not be.
Has any of your group approached him and said, "Hey, we'd really like you to do this because this will help our project get this road paved, get this place safer"? Has your association taken any steps to contact him or his attorney and encourage him to sign this?
No.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. McAllister? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify tonight? Please come forward, state your and spell your name, please.
Sure. My name is Royce, R-O-Y-C-E, Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N. And I'm here on another matter, but I'm actually building a custom home right on that corner. And when Ravenwood gets out, the kids cross, and like Mr. McAllister spoke, I know him because he's at Eaglewood, but it is an issue. But I can also understand the position of Mr. Hanaway. I know him slightly. I talked to him about buying his property years ago, and it was his intention probably to be there forever. I mean, that area of Eagle River is kind of like that. They're generally 2.5 acre parcels. Some have been split to 1.25 acres, and it's kind of real sentimental, and I was unaware of what happened with his wife's ashes being disturbed and everything. So, but it is a safety concern as a citizen sitting here, hearing it and seeing it go on the last 6 months, what goes on there, and it's hard to maintain and dust and that. But basically, you're at a lock. Put yourself in his shoes. If he was upset over something, and money doesn't always fix everything, and to offer somebody, appraised value, we all know kind of what that is if you look at your assessments, and sometimes things just aren't for sale. So I don't know. I think with that gentleman, and I know this has been going on for forever since when Doug Main and Fred Fortier owned that project before Connie acquired it. You're just probably at a standstill. The only thing I could see is somebody approached Mr. Hanaway maybe with the issue of the children's safety. That's probably it's not the money. I mean, I can tell you that. So, like I said, I'm just sitting here as a citizen, and I just thought I'd throw that out. So if you folks aren't as informed about that as me just being a general citizen and working in the area, been in Eagle River for 40 years, that's kind of the deal. The kids get out of Ravenwood, they plow the path and everything there, and then the weight restrictions are on that road not to exceed 11,000 pounds. Well, construction guys are not all familiar with that. They go down there anyhow. So, and as far as enforcement, I don't think I've seen an officer on that intersection, gazing, looking up, working on a custom home for 6 months. So it's just, short on funds they can't be at every corner. But that's just some general information, and if it helps, fine. If not, but it would truly be a safety concern. I would say when them kids get out and everything, and I know that because on site it's fenced in and there's a dog, and he's harmless, but he lets us know when the children are going by. So it's just one of them things. And Eaglewood, I don't know on that side if they have room. They should maybe entertain buying, but that would affect the offset, the alignment with the road. So I can see where it's a tough situation, and I just want to say I don't think money to Mr. Hanaway is the issue. if somebody maybe approached it, the children's safety or whatever, because where Ravenwood's located, they cut between him and another property for an access to get to Ptarmigan and then walk into Eaglewood. But that's kind of all I have to say. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I'm real familiar with that area. Done a lot of work out there. Been there 40 years, so.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir.
Through the chair, would 1,000 feet of paved road upgraded to standard be beneficial or not?
For the children's safety, no. All it would do would reduce dust. But wherever you're stopping that project, are you going to finish the road to Ptarmigan?
Well, my understanding is the next season would finish the road to Ptarmigan.
Next year they would?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think the issue of the safety is at the intersection of Ptarmigan and Eagle River Lane. It's a three-way road. It comes to T, and usually everybody, I would say, blows it is the traffic up and down Eagle River Lane.
Don't they have school guards there?
What's that? No, there's no school. No, it's not. No school guards there crossing like at some of the other schools, elementary schools in Eagle River. No crossing or anything.
So that's the local choice not to have crossing guards? The parents choose not to have that?
I can't answer that for sure. I know at like Eagle River Elementary, they have a crossing guard going across Old Eagle River Road, and then at the Eagle River Loop Road, the kids to go down to Homestead, which is probably a little farther walk than that, have crossing guards. So I don't know if the standards for crossing guards are required with a improved road.
Isn't that a volunteer issue for the local school?
I don't believe so. I think the Anchorage School District pays crossing guards.
Wouldn't you think if parents were concerned they would mobilize their own crossing guard?
Well, I know the principal, Audrey Chapman of Ravenwood, and if she thought it was a big enough concern, you bet there would be something, brought forward. And her husband works for DOT, so she would be informed of the avenues how to approach it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify? Ms. Enix, do you have a question for the petitioner?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask them, since the extension was in 2009, how many more houses have been built? And that guy might have answered them. He said something like there's 929 houses there now?
The total number of houses in Eagle Crossing?
Yeah.
I don't have that number.
No. Does Connie know?
There have been 36 additional single-family homes built, 2 phases, Phase H and Phase I.
Since 2009?
Yes.
And if you know this, if this extension goes through for October of 2014, how many more houses will be built?
Our plan that you will see at the Platting Board for Phase J for this year has 29 homes.
29, okay. And since we got this paper here regarding the phasing plan, what you guys are seeking is to build the road 1,000 linear feet this year? This year, and do you have is that part of the phasing is not contingent on anything to do with Mr. Hanaway?
That's correct.
That'll be done before his September 1st, and that's why you're asking for the extension for the 500 linear feet to finish that portion that affects his property.
That's correct.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Edmondson.
Through the chair, Mr. Sahel, can you describe to me where Phase J is going to be?
Phase J is shown on the revised phasing plan that I've handed out. The phasing plan in green shows the first segment of the road, and then Phase J are the units that are shown on the track that are north of Eagle River Lane and south of Ravenwood Elementary.
Okay, so this is actually Phase J?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm following you now. Okay. Another question, Mr. Sile, is the road grade going to change at all, or is it pretty well roughed into grade?
The road grade's there is the same grade that the paved road will have.
So really, is it going to be widened as a part of this, I would assume then, and then it'll be curb and guttered and paved? What's the road section?
What's currently in the subdivision agreement is the segment that we'll be building this year in the subdivision agreement is a strip paved road with a detached paved trail on the east side. And then where the project phases changes, it'll be curb and gutter for phase 2 from there up to Ptarmigan, and again with a detached trail on the west side. And the other thing we've agreed to do for the neighborhood is there's a pathway that goes through Phase J, and we will be improving that pathway through Phase J up to the elementary school to make a connection from the development, and it'll be a lit paved trail.
All right, so we've heard some suggestion, or we've heard some comments that improving the road will improve safety, but yet you're not changing the grade of the road. You're simply, essentially going to pave the surface that's there.
Correct.
Is that right?
We're aware, and we have heard from the community the issue of kids walking from Eaglewood over to Ptarmigan. You know, that issue's been out there for a long time. There's a trail that comes out of Eaglewood subdivision at Ptarmigan Boulevard, and then there's a paved trail that goes down Ptarmigan Boulevard to Ravenwood Elementary School. So there's a crossing of Eagle River Lane. When we finally improve that northern section, there will be curb and gutter there. We will have defined ramps at that point, but it'll still just be a simple crossing of the road. So that issue is there. The grades won't dramatically change, but it will become paved and a little more defined at the crossing. But you know, I think there will be some improvement to that safety issue, but it's not going to be dramatically different from what it is today.
Are there, I'm sorry.
There is a grant that has been proposed by Senator Anna Faircloth because the north section of Eagle River Lane has been proposed for improvement as a result of some of the safety concerns. And I believe that there will be funding, assuming that the governor doesn't veto it, that will begin design standards for the northern section of Eagle River Lane north of Ptarmigan. And as Jim mentioned earlier, we would like to also not only take care of the Hanaway property, but also be able to coordinate the final design with that intersection with the state funding, so that we're not building something and then tearing it up when the state comes along.
Thanks, Ms. Yoshimura. Another question. Are there additional phases after J that will tie into this road alignment?
Yes, there's additional phases of Eagle Crossing that will, put more units in and continue to,
on
push.
this road alignment?
No, not on the road alignment.
I mean, so nothing more will access Eagle River Lane other than Phase J, after Phase J?
Well, yes, I guess once the Hanaway property is purchased, we would develop the Hanaway property, okay, and then it would access onto Eagle River Lane also.
Okay. And just another question. This has been going on a long time, but there's just no way to realign the right-of-way there around Mr. Hanaway's property?
We looked at trying to squeeze the road. The standard that's required in the subdivision agreement is a 28-foot back of curb road with a detached trail on one side and trying to fit that in that half right-of-way, we just could not make it fit. It won't physically fit in the half right-of-way.
And you have property on the other side as well?
Yeah, then we have lots, Eaglewood lots that back up to it that are fully developed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sahil. You have 5 minutes, 50 seconds for your rebuttal testimony.
I guess the only additional testimony I'd like to provide to the board is we were aware of the concerns of the Eaglewood community with the pedestrians and the crossing of Eagle River Lane, and we think we've accommodated that in the design. I don't think the phasing substantially affects that. And we have also heard issues with the dust and wanting to get that, and we do, the Eagle River Road Service District does provide dust control along the road. They never do it as often as people would like, but we are aware of the issue. And the maintenance of that current section of the road, both the snow plowing and the dust control, is paid by Driftwood Bay Homeowners Association or Driftwood Bay LLC. So they're currently taking care of that as best they can and absorbing those costs until the full road is improved. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Mr. Walker.
When was the Hanaway right-of-way issue discovered?
2001.
So you guys have been negotiating to acquire that since 2001?
Yeah, basically. There was a time when there was research as to what the right-of-way situation was. So they weren't negotiating the entire time. First, they were trying to figure out what was true.
Now, I don't see in our packets here anything about the right-of-way issues.
I described the right-of-way issue in my letter of application for the extension.
But how about the letters of the positions being taken by Hanaway himself?
We did not include Hanaway's attorney's letters on his opinion of the right-of-way.
We did not, we've owned the property, I think, about 7 years. And there was a condition put on us a few years ago, and Erica, maybe it's in your packet, or you remember that we cannot go east for any of our development until we complete Eagle River Lane. And when we shortly after we acquired that property, we agreed to that stipulation. And so then when we started our exploration of building Eagle River Lane, that's when Mr. Davidge met Mr. Hanaway at one of the Eagle River Valley Community Councils. And he said, this road encroaches on our property. And we didn't know anything about that at the time. And so then he gave us some documents, and then we hired a lawyer, and then we hired another lawyer, and got 2 opinions. And really, quite frankly, the municipal law department says, this is a matter for the courts to decide whether or not, this section line easement on Mr. Hanaway's property exists or it doesn't exist. We really don't want to go to court, and so our approach has been in the last 18 months to try and work with Mr. Hanaway and to acquire his property. We don't want to go to court, and we want to be respectful and not trespass theoretically on Mr. Hanaway's property. So we thought the acquisition of the property is the most reasonable solution, and we've been working on that acquisition and have had several personal meetings with Mr. Hanaway. We don't think it's a matter of price. We just think it's a matter of he doesn't have any place else to go. That's really it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim. Mr. Chairman, let me just add, Mr. Hanaway has been enormously cooperative and helpful in a topographical survey of his property and allowed our people on his property to do that. We've also done an extensive wetlands survey on his property, which he's allowed. So he is very cooperative in working through this, and it's just my opinion. I'm the one that's been working with him for so long, and apparently the only one that ever listened to him. And I think that we've developed a relationship there which will get us where we need to get by the end of next year.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Edmondson.
Actually, I have a question for staff and for the traffic engineer. She's here tonight. I'm reading through your comments in this case, and it talks about public complaints regarding safety, and therefore that's how you've proposed that this project be phased. Could you describe to me what you see as the safety concerns and why you think that the phase one should be paved essentially 1,100 feet instead of the 500 feet that was proposed by the petitioner?
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Trevor Edmondson.
Mr. Edmondson, sorry. The phasing of the road, the concerns that have come up, I guess, on this section of road haven't been so much the pedestrians. It's more concerns of the condition of the road in the wintertime and what it degrades down to. It's rather narrow. It's for emergency access only. And like we said, it gets dusty, it gets potholed, it's not built to full standard. And so my concern with the original phasing of only taking it halfway through that horizontal curve is that the road's actually going to be super elevated through that curve, which means it's actually going to have a cross slope through it as it goes through that curve. And if we only upgraded the road halfway through, all of a sudden there'd be a break in that roadway going around this curve that is on a rather steep grade. And so in my professional opinion, I thought it would be better to, one, get as much of the road paved as possible to help negate the dust concerns, the rutting concerns, and also get completely through that horizontal curve so we could get through the super elevated portion and make so it was a continuous roadway all the way through that curve coming down that hill, because it is about a 9% grade going around a 500-foot radius curve. And it does build a separated pedestrian pathway, which will get the pedestrians off the roadway because that is not there as well. And there also will be lighting. So with those additional improvements that will be part of this phase, we thought it would improve the safety and get us at least 2/3 of the way there, and then give time for the Hanaway discussion to happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed and the matter now rests with the board. Can I have a motion to approve? Mr. Fuller, can you approves? Is Mr. Walker seconds? Can you speak to your motion?
Yes, I would move that we approve this motion S11496-7 and S10625-12, Eagle Crossing, amendment of the conditions of the approval and the time extension for the full build-out of Eagle Grove Lane and time extension amendment of subdivision agreement 2006023 until October 2014, as was originally submitted here on this municipality memorandum. And that would be Department recommendation A, approve the request as originally in this, not as modified, and A and B. Thank you.
So my understanding is that you're moving to approve the department's recommendations A1 and B, as stated on page 4 of the...
Not as modified verbally here at the beginning of this. In other words, the original 1,150 feet and the 570 feet for the second phase.
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite clear on the motion, and that was just for A and
No,
A.
the request is for the 570 feet for phase 2 and the 1,050 feet for phase 1, as I understand it.
Well, the request or the motion would be for on page 4 under department recommendations.
I'm sorry. I need to back up. The original request by the petitioners is what I would like to make a motion to approve.
And Mr. Walker, you second that motion? Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Walker seconds that motion. Is there any objections to the motion?
Yeah, I object.
I see objections to the motion, so we'll vote on the motion as presented.
Do we get to talk about it?
Yes.
Well, I'm just going to say that I'm going to vote against that because the petitioner came in here and said that they agreed to these conditions and approved of it, and I'm not sure why we would grant them something when they've already agreed to it. Plus, it seems like there is a rational basis for the changes that have been presented by the municipality that were just spoken to. So I intend to vote against that motion.
Anyone else that would like to speak to the motion? Mr. Edmondson.
Through the chair, I intend to vote against the motion as well. I think the petitioner is in support of the staff's recommendations. I understand why they struggled with accepting that, but I also understand staff's recommendations. And, you know, honestly, the road needs to get built, and this is there's a requirement to build the road within a certain time frame, and the petitioner is trying to accomplish that as quickly as possible, I believe. And but I do understand the economics of what they originally proposed. But you know, like I said, I think they're in support. Petitioners in support of the department's recommendations, and therefore I intend to vote against the current motion.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm not supporting the motion. I just second it so we could go ahead and get on with the discussion. I would move that we amend the motion to the department recommendations instead, and that we would move to approve the southern 1,100 feet no later than 2013, and the northern 520 feet by October 1st, 2014, And the department recommendations is stated on page 4 rather than the original request on page 1.
Can we have a discussion on the amendment to the motion?
Well, this is Brent Cole. I'm not sure that we can. Don't we? I mean, I'm not a procedures person, but don't we have to vote on what the motion is in front of us? And then if we want, we can put in a new motion?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. There can only be one motion on a case. So the motion can be amended, but if the motion that is on the floor fails, you cannot make a new motion.
Say that again? I'm sorry.
There can only be one main motion on a case. Mr. Fuller has moved the original proposal. Should that motion fail, there cannot be a second motion to move the staff recommendation. So either this motion passes, it's amended, or it fails, and that's the end.
So if it fails, then they're not going to get their extension at all.
That's correct.
But we can amend it.
You can amend it.
It can be amended or he could withdraw it.
That's correct.
So currently we are up.
Is there a pending motion to amend on the floor?
Yes. Is there any discussion for that amendment?
If there's a motion to amend, I'll second, because I think it was already made by Mr. Walker. Did somebody else second that yet?
That'll work. Mr. Cole moved to amend the original motion. Mr. Cole, would you like to speak to that motion?
Well, my motion would be that in the case of S11496-7 and S-10625-12, Eagle Crossing subdivision, that I would move to grant the approval of the request to amend the conditions of approval number 1 for platting case number S10625-11 and condition of approval number 1 for platting case S11496-5 to state what is set forth in department recommendation A at page 4 and number 1.
Thank you. And Mr. Walker seconds. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the amendment passes. Can we have a motion for item B?
Did we just amend it? I don't know if we have to vote on it. We've amended the motion. So now the present motion in front of us is to adopt the recommendation of the municipality. I think we have to have a discussion and then vote on it as amended. That's my understanding, and I apologize because I'm not very familiar with all this. All we did is amend it. We didn't approve it. We just amended it and voted to amend it. Amendment. But we still have to vote on it now as amended.
Can we have a motion for the approval of case S-11496-7?
It's already on the table. You just need to, is there a discussion on it? And if there's no discussion, then vote. Because the motion is already pending. No, we just voted on to amend what was up before. So now we have this motion. I'm apologizing. Because
Can we have discussion on the amended motion?
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, the amended motion would change the conditions so that the department recommendation, A, approval would contain that they would have to build the 1,100 linear feet of road this year and the 520 linear feet of road next year, and then amending subdivision agreement to address only the southern 1,100 feet and entering into a new subdivision agreement for the remaining northern 520 feet. That's the amendment, correct?
That's correct.
That would be included, so that would be a condition of approval.
Yes.
Okay, but the amendment did not address Department Recommendation B?
That will be a separate motion.
Okay, and that would come up before any voting?
No. We will vote on item A first. Once that's either approved or denied, then we'll go to item B as a separate motion.
Okay, that's all.
Any other discussion?
I'm sorry?
So can I have a positive motion for case S-11496-7 and S-11625-12?
Mr. Chair, there's a motion on the floor. There's a motion on the floor that was made by Mr. Fuller. It was amended by Mr. Cole. You voted on the amendment. Now you need to vote on the main motion.
Is there any objection to the current motion that's on the floor? Seeing no objection, the motion is approved. Can I have a positive motion for item B? Mr. Cole moves to approve.
I think this is right, that it would be a positive motion to approve the 2-year extension for subdivision agreement 2006-023 and amendment request for condition number 2 for cases S-10625-11 and S-11-496-5 in case number S-11496-7 and S-10625-12.
Mr. Walker seconds. Could you speak to your motion?
I don't intend to vote for this because it's against the approval from the municipality.
Any other discussion? Seeing objections, we'll vote on the motion. And for clarification, a yes vote will approve item B, condition B, and a no vote will deny condition B. And the condition fails with 6 nays and 1 yay. Thank you. Any individuals may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or B, an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. We'll take a short break, and Mr. Young can come back into the room.
I don't know. Okay.
Break's over. We're back in session. The next case. Could we have quiet in the audience, please? We're starting our procedures. Could you guys take your discussion outside so we can have our meeting, please? The next case is case number S11973-1, WG Pipple Subdivision. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This case is 3 requests relating to a 1.4 acre lot located near downtown Eagle River, just west of the Old Glen Highway and north of Farm Avenue. The first request is to subdivide one lot into 2 lots. The second request is a variance from the required width to depth ratio, and the third request is to vacate a section line easement on the west property boundary. The current lot has commercial development on the east side of the lot by the Old Glen Highway and 2 duplexes located on the west side of the lot. Recently, this lot changed hands. The commercial area was redeveloped, and it is my understanding that the owners of the commercial area are not interested in having the residential area, and so they are seeking to subdivide the lot and sell it. The staff recommends approval of all 3 requests with various conditions. One of the conditions is to establish grandfather rights for the duplexes. If they're to establish grandfather rights, if they're able to establish grandfather rights, this plat would move them towards conformity with a minimum density requirement in the B3 zoning district. There's a portion of the parking for the commercial area that is in proposed Lot 3B. A portion of the parking for the proposed Lot 3B commercial area is on proposed Lot 3A. So one of the conditions is that there be a joint access agreement and a joint parking agreement between the two lots. You'll also have noticed in your case packet that there are various utility issues with sewer service and water service that need to be resolved. The section line that is on the west property boundary that would be in Lot 3A has been vacated in other areas, and the municipality has no objection to vacating that section line easement. We also have no objection to the variance for the depth to width ratio. The lot, while it looks like a flag lot, is not actually a flag lot because what would have been the flagpole portion actually meets the required lot width standard, but it is that flag shape that creates the need for this variance. So again, the staff recommends approval on each item by separate motion. Starting on page 9, approval of the request for variance of item A, approval of the request for vacation in item B with one condition, and approval of the plat in item C with 14 conditions. I apologize that the last condition is labeled 11, but it should be number 14. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Will the petitioner's representative please approach the podium, state your name and spell your last name, please?
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Tanya Hickok, H-I-C-K-O-K. I am a civil engineer and planner with Dowell HKM, and tonight I am representing AutoZone. AutoZone recently purchased the property, and if you have been by the property recently, you'll have noticed that they are under construction. They will be open later this year if they haven't been open already. As Ms. McConnell stated, AutoZone is not interested in being a landlord to the residents in the back of their lot and would like to subdivide it off. During the construction process, they also were notified that there is a section line easement, and that just so happens to encroach where the buildings are actually located, and hence the reason for the vacation of the section line easement, which we have made an application to the state of Alaska DNR requesting the same vacation pending the muni's approval of that vacation. We have reviewed all the conditions of approval as proposed by staff, and we have no objections to them. To us, they're a matter of housekeeping and making sure that all the utilities are accounted for, as well as the access easement and the parking easements. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the petitioner's representative? Thank you.
Thank you.
And you have 8 minutes and 37 seconds left for rebuttal. Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify on this matter? Anyone at all? Seeing none, you have 8 minutes and 37 seconds for rebuttal.
I have no additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the petitioner's representative? None? Thank you. I now close the public hearing and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion in case S11973-1 for we have different motions, and these are on page 9. May I have a positive motion for the first motion, which is number A, or letter A? Mr. Cole, would you speak to your motion, please?
In the case of S-11973-1 subdivision WG Pipples subdivision, I would move for the approval of the request for variance from AMC .80.300D. You want me to speak to that?
Yes, please. And, excuse me, and Mr. Cole, include your findings, please.
Yes. In this case, based on the testimony limited that has been provided by the petitioner and the information that is provided in the staff's analysis, which goes from page 6, or actually page 1 to page 9, I would vote for and support this motion. I believe that the requirements for a variance request set forth at page 8, which is that there are special circumstances or conditions affecting the property, that the strict application of the provisions of the subdivision regulations would be clearly impractical and unreasonable or undesirable to the general public. This standard appears to be met. There are 2 duplexes in Lot 3A. Strict applications of the subdivision regulations would require them to be demolished, which does not seem to be in the public interest. Second, the granting of specific variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property in the area in which the property is situated. Again, this standard appears to be met. It will not be, the granting of this variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or other property in the area, and it will allow these structures, as I indicated, to remain. Third, such variance will not have the effect of nullifying the intent and purpose of the subdivision regulations or the comprehensive plan of the municipality. Again, there has not been brought out any specific subdivision regulations that would be violated or a violation of the comprehensive plan by the granting of this, and undue hardship would result from the strict compliance with specific provisions or requirements of the subdivision regulations. And again, having to demolish these 2 buildings does not make sense, and it would appear to me to be an undue hardship. Therefore, I would be voting in favor of this motion.
Thank you, and I want to acknowledge that Mr. Fuller seconds this motion. Is there any additional discussion or questions? Hearing and seeing none, this motion passes. May I have a positive motion for item B? Mr. Cole.
In the case of S11973-1 WJ Pipple subdivision, I would move to approve the request for vacation of the 33-foot wide section line easement running along the west property boundary of proposed Lot A, subject to petitioner obtaining approval for the vacation of the section line easement from the State Department of Natural Resources and State Department of Transportation and Public Facilities.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmondson seconds. Are there any discussions or findings, additional findings?
I find that the request follows a previous successful petition to vacate the portion of the 33-foot section line, that the surrounding area traffic circulation is not going to be impacted by the vacation. The reviewing agencies had no objection to the vacation request, and the State Department of Transportation comments state that the subdivision vacation can't be vacated without their approval, and that's to be required prior to recording the plat.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any additional findings or comments? Is there any objection to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. May I have a positive motion for item C and the included subjects? Mr. Cole. Would you
In the
make
case of S-11973-1 WG Pipple subdivision, I would move for the approval of the plat subject to the conditions set forth on section C of the department's recommendation, page 9, paragraphs 1 through 13. And I'm not sure whether that was meant to be 14 rather than 11 on page 10.
It is meant to be 14. Staff corrected that.
1 through 14 on pages 9 and 10 of our packet.
Thank you. Mr. Walker seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please, Mr. Cole?
I intend to vote in favor of this based on the recommendations of staff, the comments that were provided by the various agencies, and the information provided at pages 1 through 8 of the packet on this matter.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the Board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based on the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or an appeal of the Board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. Is there any other old business? I'm aware of none. Are there any persons to be heard? Are there any reports? We come to board member comments. Are there any board member comments besides the ones I propose to put forth? Okay. I have a question of staff. It's my understanding that the new Title 21 is passed and that petitioners have the opportunity and that they will go into effect in December of this year, and petitioners have the opportunity to fall under the existing Title 21 up until December, or they can elect to use the new Title 21. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The Title 21 rewrite after 11 plus years was adopted on February 26th by the Assembly. It becomes effective on January 1st of 2014. For the full year of 2014, petitioners may choose to come under the current, which is the old code, or they may come under the new code. So the code that we're working under today is the only choice for the rest of 2013. This is going to make 2014 challenging, I think, for everybody, for staff, for boards and commissions, but staff is committed to, providing you with the best guidance possible so that you understand as each case comes forward what the regulations and requirements for that case may be. We will also be working probably later on this year to do training as necessary on the new code. Frankly, the subdivision regulations didn't change significantly. So I think you shouldn't find too many differences between the old and the new code, but we will be sure to schedule at least a work session to discuss that with you.
Thank you. That answers my concern. Are there any other board member comments? Again, I'd like to welcome our new board members, and I would receive a motion for adjournment. Mr. Walker?
I move we adjourn.
And Ms. Enix seconds, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.